Well, hello and good afternoon. Je peux parler en français, mais mon français, c'est pas au niveau pour faire la présentation. Donc, après, vous pouvez me poser les questions. En français, j'essaie de répondre, mais désolé, je vais parler en anglais, if that's okay. Okay. What I really want to talk about today is how the consumer has changed and how what you're seeing out there how it has affected an old business like us. So in the UK, Burger King has been around for about 30 years, and it's changed dramatically over the last 5 years. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take you through a few subjects, and then we'll hopefully give you time to ask me some questions. So, how do we go? So, really, we're going to look at three different things. We're going to talk about how have the consumer's needs actually changed, what's happened with food delivery. Those two things are fundamentally the same in many ways. And then also how have we responded in terms of marketing strategy. So in terms of marketing strategy, a company like mine, who would spend millions of pounds a year on advertising, what we would do, and normally on 5 years ago or 7 years ago, all we'd do is we would advertise on the traditional old TV channels and do it like that. And obviously with the proliferation of what we've seen, one cannot do that anymore. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So I want you to think about as well, as we go through, a couple of questions. One, does sustainability drive profitability? Or can the two coexist? Or actually, are they not linked at all? Secondly, where are those habits going to go afterwards? Where are our consumers going to change from here? Because one thing that is certain is that they are changing, and we will only survive and prosper in all of our businesses, whatever businesses we do, if we move with those changes. Okay. There we go. So, talking about sustainability, what we try and stand for at Burger King is we talk about something called Burger King for Good. And we talk about that on our website, and it's really about the way we do business. Now, we're not sitting out there pretending to be the most environmentally friendly company in the world, nor are we trying to claim that we have the best ecological or environmental credentials. But what we are doing is we're trying to say, this is the direction we're going in. These are the goals that we have against certain areas, which I'll talk about in a minute. And this is how we're going to kind of measure them. And we say that quite publicly. And that is good for two reasons. One is hopefully it reassures the consumer, you, the consumer. And two, what it does is hold people like me who are trying to run the business to account. So we have to do what we say we're going to do. So I think there are a couple of benefits there. But actually, what does Burger King really stand for? In terms of the consumer, what it really stands for, and what we try and talk about in what we do, is we try and talk about big taste, i.e., so the food you eat has to taste great. Flame grilling, the Whopper. So flame grilling and the Whopper is something very different that you'll get from McDo, which is ubiquitous here in France, whereas we're trying to say we're selling you better quality food, which is differentiated, unique, and has a big flavor, and what we call big taste. And what we're trying to do is concentrate on a number of areas where we're going to be good for the planet, focus on the right sourcing in terms of animal welfare, look after our people properly and our customers. And then we have a commitment with our community. So how do we actually do that in terms of sustainability, and how does that marry up with our profitability? Well, you can see the slide, it's very simple. We can't concentrate, and I think one of the issues in terms of the environment and climate change and all of the questions that are associated with that, the argument and the discussion is so broad, you cannot focus on everything. So what you have to do as an organization is focus on a key area. That doesn't mean ignore everything, but you can only stand for one or two, or three things. If you try and stand for any more than that, your message will not get through, no one will listen to you, and more importantly, no one will really believe you. And you won't be able to do it justice either. So what are we trying to do? We're trying to be good for the planet, we're trying to be good for our people, as we've talked about. And so these are the areas that we concentrate on. So, you might say that's all well and good. Well, what are your commitments? So let me just give you a couple of very simple examples of what our commitments are. So what we're saying is that by 2025, we're going to recycle 100% of our packaging. So, i.e., there will be no single-use plastics, and then all of our other packaging we will be reusing by 2025. Now, you might say, well, everyone's doing that, and that is true, but therefore that is good, if that's what we're trying to do. We're also going to reduce food waste by 30%. Clearly, if you work in any sort of fresh food environment, from the supermarché to our world, what's going to happen is there's going to be waste. And there has to be waste, because if there isn't waste, your food is not fresh. So how do you minimize that waste and get the food that is fresh to you? So there's a lot of time and effort doing that. And then we look at our menu as well. What are we going to do? How are we going to reduce our carbon footprint? How are we actually going to do that? Well, a couple of things. One is all of our ingredients are going to be 100% certified sustainable. But secondly, the other thing is by 2030, and you might think it odd for someone like Burger King to say this, 50% of our menu will be meat-free. We've already launched a lot of products, and we sell quite well on those products, and we're going to keep driving that in order to maintain the balance. That doesn't mean we're walking away from the Whopper or our flame grilling. Absolutely not. But what it does mean is we are aware of our responsibilities, and we are committed to doing that. And we think we can do both of those things together. Well, how are we doing? So originally, when we looked at the business in the UK, in 2017, we were sourcing our beef from everywhere. Now all of our beef is from the UK and Ireland. And I can assure you, in Burger King in France, all of your beef in Burger King in France is from France or from Ireland as well. In any of our foods, so in any of our foodstuffs, anything that you chose to eat at Burger King, and that's the same here in France as it is in the UK, there are no artificial colours, there are no preservatives, or flavours or in any of our food. The electricity we buy is from 100% renewable supplies, but that's not good enough necessarily for us. What we're now about to do is we're about to invest actually into a plant and build a plant that is a wind and solar plant too. We're talking about being good for the communities. We've launched and we've teamed up and we've committed a large sum of money to partner up with a UK charity called UK Youth, so we can do that as well. We removed all the plastic toys. We did that before McDo did in the UK. And we made steps on our eggs. And we've joined something in the UK called Better Chicken Commitment. So we're driving all of these objectives in the right direction. So there is considerable progress made in terms of sustainability. So the question, though, to ask on that is sustainability driving profitability? And I would argue necessarily that it isn't. However, without sustainability, I would say that there will be no profitability. What do I mean by that? Well, BK for Good drives everything that we do. We will only do our business by doing it in the right way, and we're guided by that. So everything we do will be increasingly sustainable. So I don't think one drives the other. I would look at it as being a kind of holistic, so they're all together. Okay, here we go. Let's talk about changing consumer habits. So we bought the UK business, which is 600 restaurants, in 2017, and we were in for a bit of a shock. So this might be difficult to read. In fact, you can probably read it better than I can, as I need glasses, as I'm so old. All these points tell you are, we're a Burger King, what's the relevance, who are you, why are you so dead, does it still exist? This is quite a harsh lesson after we just bought the business. So clearly there's a consumer need for how do we make ourselves relevant. So the single biggest factor was we had 500, McDonald's had 1,500. And this is exactly the challenge that has faced Burger King here in France. And they've done it, they've managed that brilliantly here. We've tried to do, if not something similar, but it is all about convenience. It is what we think. Yeah? No home delivery, you know, and you don't have one near me. So in early 2017, when we bought this business, basically there was no home delivery to talk about. We had no digital infrastructure, or we had systems that wouldn't talk to each other. And we were well behind the curve on how you, the customer, could order from us, how you could interact with us, how you could get your food to us. And we had absolutely no customer data at all, or minimal customer data, but stuff that we couldn't use. So it was slightly arcane. And also remember, we've bought a business, when you've got 500 outlets, we might have, you know, systems, point of sale systems that don't look like the stuff we've seen out there, but are back from the, you know, mid and late 1980s. So they're outdated, they're outmoded, they don't talk to any of your technologies. So it's a bit of a legacy problem. So what we needed to do was make it faster and easier for our customers to really try and get to us and to try and talk to us. So what we tried to do in 2018 is a very simple slide, this, is we began to say, well, what should we actually do? It's not difficult. Often I say when you're trying to turn around a massive business, it's very easy working out what to do. It's not a difficult exam question. How do we turn this business around? You can work out what you need to do. But what is incredibly difficult is doing it. And why is it? Well, because it's very, very, very capital hungry. It sucks up huge amounts of capital, and often a lot of your providers can't quite do what they say they can do. Yeah? And you know, that's a real point for you as exhibitors that you should think about. So what are we trying to do when we're trying to create a very simple digital ecosystem? Yeah? What we wanted to do was we wanted more customers to come in through us digitally. So the amount of people who are ordering from us digitally was probably under 5%, or well less than that. We wanted those digital customers to come to us more often. It's fairly obvious. We've just launched a loyalty program, you know, and those loyal customers come to us many more times than those that are not loyal, i.e. those that have the app come to us more often. And we can talk directly to consumers, i.e. by splitting them up, or over time, we're going to talk to every consumer individually. And we can improve and develop new customer-facing tech. Actually, well, I don't mean that. What we can actually do is get stuff that works for you and get it as simple as we can in front of you. So how have we gone along on doing that? Funnily enough, COVID was very, very good for us. So if you can imagine, we've only got 500 restaurants, and actually McDonald's have 1,500. One of the things that I said earlier was people can't get to us because of convenience. We're not near them. And digitally, we were rubbish. You couldn't order a delivery, or you could and it didn't work and it was hopeless. And so we just drove more customers away from us than towards us. So you can see from the left-hand side of the slides where we were. So in 2017, we got on board with, after we took over, with Deliveroo and Just Eat. And you can see how those sales were steadily growing, very slowly growing. We're probably quite proud. I think I was probably quite proud of that growth as well on the left-hand side. March 2020 falls off a cliff because we went into lockdown in the UK on the 13th of March. April 2020, we had almost nothing. But the guy that runs Deliveroo is a man called Will Shu, and he's quite a friend of mine, and he got me on the phone late March saying there are 2 restaurants in London, only 2 restaurants in London that are open for delivery. And those obviously weren't Burger Kings, and they are taking fortunes. Whatever you do, open some restaurants. So in April, we opened 4 restaurants for delivery in April 2020. And one was in Swindon, and I can't remember where the other ones were. One in London and elsewhere. And they all took huge money. I mean, really, really, for us, massive money in terms of chiffre d'affaires and massive turnover on a weekly basis. So we suddenly went, oh my God, you know, we have worked out how to talk to a customer now. In fact, it was the customer was desperate to talk to anyone. And we happened to be the first people they could talk to. So we then went, right, we ran around and opened as many as we could. And actually in May 2020, we've had quite good sales. But that's really only from 50 restaurants out of 500 that are open. We made so much money in May 2020. I think we were the only restaurant company, hospitality business in the UK that made money in that month. And that was purely driven by the volume that was coming into us on delivery. So that kind of story. We then launched Uber Eats, which didn't make the other 2 players happy at all, because obviously they want to be on their own. So we've now got all 3 aggregators. So we have Uber Eats, Just Eat, and Deliveroo that operate in the UK market, and we're with all of them. And our skill, or not skill, but what we try and do is not fall out with any of them and form really good quality partnerships with each of those and try and make sure that they don't cross over in terms of promotions, etc. So that's what we try to do. And then you can see what has happened. What has happened to our sales since then, okay? So what we saw is as we came out of COVID, the delivery it still stayed quite strong. And actually this isn't up to date because it's obviously 9 months out of date as it goes to December 21. But I think what you can see is that what we've done, or what COVID has done for Burger King in the UK is given us an entire new chunk of sales that we didn't have. It's become a very important part of our business. Now, clearly, if you remember at the end of, I don't know what it was like here, but at the end of 21, in fact, I came on holiday to France and Monsieur Macron made the British go red. So we all had to run to come in to get into France because we weren't allowed to get in on the border. And I remember picking up 2 of my children from Gare du Nord at about 2 minutes to midnight before they shut the thing. And that's true. But we were still under some forms of lockdown. I can't quite remember. But what's happened is the delivery sales have eased off a bit. What's very interesting is ourselves, and I think our competitors, KFC and McDonald's in particular, they have also maintained their delivery sales. And what's happened is the other, we would call casual dining, so the next sort of level up, as it were, their volumes have come off, and those volumes probably have come towards us. So it's very interesting to see that we've created this. And so therefore, what does that do? Very obviously, in terms of changing consumer habits, we're now able to reach people in London. We're able to reach people in the cities where we didn't have that penetration, where we weren't able to talk to the customers. Remember the first slide, who are you? Burger King is dead. Now we can actually, largely, deliver some food to them. And obviously we get better at working out how to do it. So we can deliver hot food to them, quality food to them, in fast. So we're able to talk to them. So it did open up new customers. These are facts. So also, we were what I would call in England a slightly monocultural brand. So we were slightly male. We've attracted more women to our brand. We've also made the age group younger. And if you are in the restaurant business, particularly if you're in the fast food, you like younger people because their penchant, or the amount of time they go out, or how many times they go out, and the money they spend going out, is much higher than the older audience. So that's why we like it. It has made our brand, going more digital has made our brand go younger. And also, we've really driven our sales in London. where we were at times, frankly, irrelevant. So it's done a lot for us, this kind of consumer changing. And actually, it was clearly a trend that was happening, and COVID has sped it up. I would argue that a lot of customers' behaviors have gone back. So certainly in the UK, what we see is a lot of businesses which are direct to the consumer, which had huge volumes in COVID. Those volumes have come off a fair chunk. But we're still quite happy with where we are in terms of our performance. Also, you can see Burger King on the left, McDo on the right. You can see how we've done. So we've really driven how many we have taken off the old-fashioned technique of the telephone and put onto some form of digital channel is what we've done. The other thing we did, well, because we're much smaller, what we try to do is we try to be quite agile. So if you look at the bottom left-hand picture, where it says drivers queue round the block, that was almost, I think, the first drive. We call them drive-throughs in England. That was the first one that we opened, and that was just off a motorway. So it's just off, motorway. And we got in terrible trouble with the police because all the traffic went back up onto the motorway, so they made us shut the restaurant because we were blocking the motorway. So, when we reopened, there was a huge demand. You can see Burger King and KFC in the middle. So it was really good from that point of view. So again, that drove awareness of our brand, us being able to open. Now, this slide is perhaps the best slide for you to understand how the consumer has changed. We obviously have not got scales on it. But if you look at the left-hand side, the big brown or black block was customers walking in and ordering over the counter. Then above that, you have everyone doing what we call drive-through. So round the drive lane. And at the very top, you had a little bit of delivery. And now you can see how that's changing at the right. So the green one is very interesting because that is kiosk. And our competitor, McDo, have done a really good job and we're ahead of us on that. However, and we're short of chips to drive these kiosks, but they drive average transaction value. The consumer wants to spend more time on a kiosk than at a counter, and they spend more money doing that. So they have a better experience, and we as a business earn a bit more money out of doing it. But it's quite interesting, and that's a really stark, it's a real classic way of showing you how the consumer's changed. Okay. Also, you remember who are we, where are we? Convenience. This is what we call convenience store. Yeah, that's gone up. People think there are more of us around. And actually, there aren't that many more Burger Kings. There aren't nearly as many. There are 500 versus 1,500. And people think our convenience, i.e., people believe we're much bigger than we are. So, what has all of this done? So if you think that all of our sales have moved, not all of our sales, but our sales have moved from being over the counter, walk in, into an old restaurant, into one where we've remodeled the restaurants, we have bright new, shiny kiosks, we have ways that you can order your delivery. What it allowed us to do is go back onto what we call the high street. So go back into towns, go back into regional towns on the high street. Because we think consumers still want to go out and enjoy themselves. They might not be shopping that much, but they're going to go out and walk around or whatever. And we can go there because the rents have dropped down post-COVID on high streets. So we have more fair rents, or what we would call market rents, so you can afford those rents. And then we also have more sales on delivery, so we have more sales. So we can take smaller spaces because we know more is going on delivery, pay less rent, and make a bit more money. And what does that do? That allows us to open in cities where we weren't and couldn't afford to. We drive jobs, drive opportunities, and it also helps us drive our brand. So I've got a few pictures, pretty pictures to end up on. So this is exactly what I've just been talking you through. So there's an opportunity to grow more and different types of restaurant. From just apart from being on retail parks with drives, which is really where we are focused, we can go into these towns. So we then build these pretty things. So we've gone back to Milton Keynes. Milton Keynes, you don't need to know where it is. It's in the middle of the UK. It's a rather boring town. We had a franchisee that was in there beforehand, couldn't make any money, didn't remodel the restaurant, took less money, left. We came back in, renegotiated the rent, i.e. made sure the rent went down, we lowered the rent. We then invested a lot of money into the restaurant, as you can see, spent a load more effort and time on digital and delivery, and we've doubled and trebled their sales. So we've now got a restaurant that looks good, is great for our brand, represents the customer, and drives a return on our investment. That's what that's doing. So we've got a few more pictures. Here we go. Then Norwich is it's a regional town in Norfolk. Don't need to know where it is, but that's tiny. This is absolutely too small. This is 100 square meters, which traditionally is far too small for these type of operations that we build, because our investment cost is too high to make a return on that kind of space. But we're able to do it because we have such a strong delivery sales, such strong amount of customers walking past, and we're taking really good money in that site too. So, I think I've just about reached the end. I've got about 4 minutes left, so does anyone have any questions or not? We have a question over here. You can try my French.
Ok. Vous avez parlé d'éco-responsabilité, sustainability.
Ah oui?
Est-ce que vous mettez le même niveau d'éco-responsabilité sur tous les pays, ou est-ce que vous restez sur les standards pour chaque pays?
C'est une super question. Ça dépend. Par exemple, ici en Europe, les standards sont beaucoup plus hauts par rapport dans les autres pays. Parce que nos consommateurs ici demandent, et aussi nos fournisseurs en Europe ont la capacité de faire. Et ça, c'est pourquoi on est, comment on dit, à l'avance. Mais le monde marche comme ça, yeah? Et même si on est en arrière, ils bougent un peu. Donc, ils arrivent, mais pas en même temps. Ça va? Vous comprenez ça? Yeah?
I have a second question.
Yeah, okay, in English. Perfect, yeah?
Il va y avoir la loi AGEC, the 2023 law in France, where you have to use only reusable packaging in the restaurant. Is it something that you plan to use in all Europe, or just start in France? And
yes, I think when we see those, because we've had other laws in England or in the Nordics, which are slightly different. And normally, what we do is we look at it and we let the country that has that law and that problem deal with it, and then we take the learning from it about a year or two later. So we go, how are they doing it? What's the best way of doing it? How can we reduce our packaging and make it affordable for us and affordable for our consumers as well? Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Je vais poser la question en français, mais vous pouvez me répondre en anglais, c'est cool. Est-ce que vous pouvez juste compléter avec votre stratégie de com? Parce qu'on a remarqué que vous avez pas mal évolué dans ce sens-là aussi, avec des publicités qui sont un peu différentes de ce qu'on a l'habitude de voir, et qui, de ce qu'on a vu, en fait, accompagner d'une manière parfaite la dynamique que vous aviez sur les autres éléments de votre mix marketing. Donc voilà.
Okay. Let me try and answer that. I will answer it in English, as I understand it. We are very similar in the UK to France in the way we market, in the sense of we see ourselves as a challenger brand. We are therefore more agile, and we will take advantage of certain occasions, and we will make fun of ourselves, not our consumers, but we will try and get people to laugh. So we'd like you as a consumer to walk past a bit of pub and go and smile and go, yeah, that's nice. So we will do that, whereas when we look at our competitors, we tend to find that they're much bigger and they're a bit safer, and they don't. So we can take, so as an example, in COVID, we put an advert on in the UK, where we said, big advert saying, order from McDonald's. And obviously we didn't want them to order from McDonald's, but we said, order from McDonald's. Hospitality, restaurants, the marché de restauration is having a really difficult time, so we want you to order from anywhere. So that was our gist, and that, you know, they would hate that kind of advert because, not I hate it, I'm being unkind, but so we try and be much more agile. But we have changed our marketing strategy from being on what we would call linear TV. We're much more digitally focused. So we're digital, much more digital channels, all lined up with all the different series on TV, but equally, not only we digitally, the other thing we do a lot more of now than we used to is locally. So if you take here with your country, there'll be a lot of advertising. So if you open a Burger King in Sallanches, you'll see all around Sallanches, on all the bus shelters, we call them bus shelters, on the ad shells, there will be directional signage like that. That is effective, and digital is effective. But what is less effective, or has proven to be over time, is the old-fashioned linear TV. And clearly we're all doing much more straight to you, the consumer. And over time, I think we're all going to market to you individually. Okay. I'm seeing my screen's gone pink in terms of time.
Yeah. Just one last question in English, if it's okay for you.
Yeah.
Just to be more global, the title of the keynote was about inflation and changes of consumer. We are in a very strange context right now, economic, political. The prices of the food and the ingredients are blowing. So how are you going to react to the changes from the pressure of the ingredients that are going to increase potentially the price of your products, and the changes also in terms of consumer behavior?
Yeah, I think so. If we look at it, I mean, and I'll just talk a little bit about inflation, because we have exactly the same all the way across Europe. The prices are the same, really. Inflation has been a big problem, or is quite a big problem for us. However, I think we as organizations are big enough to last through it. But if we look at chicken prices in Europe have gone up 60%. So if you're buying 100 million of chicken, euros of chicken, that's gone up 60%. Your beef has gone up 50% in the last year. And those are input prices into people like ourselves. You, the consumer, will be seeing that now, whereas we were probably seeing that 4 or 5 months ago. So my view, and it is only a personal view, so it's not a publicly quotable one, but my personal view is that in terms of input prices, i.e. what I am seeing, I am not seeing much more movement on that. i.e. I don't think chicken and beef prices are going to go up much more, and dairy has also gone up as well, and all of these have gone up, but I don't think we're going to see much more. I think you, the consumer, will see these prices until halfway through next year. But for us, I think we will begin to see it come off the beginning of next year, if that makes sense. Why do I say that? One reason really is because you look at prices of wheat, which is a food. So 80% of a chicken, or 70% of a chicken, is driven by what it eats, and obviously the heating behind it. And that price is coming down, and it's coming down, has come down quite a bit. So that's why I see that. And the oil price, when the oil price gets below $90 a barrel, fundamentally food inflation starts coming back. But it takes a long time to get into the system. So consumers will not see it, but that's my own personal view. I might be wrong, but that is what I think. The problem with my argument is energy. And energy, and particularly Russian gas, or not Russian gas, but the the energy crisis that we have and the way in Europe the energy market is worked out. The energy market is worked out by gas, ultimately, the last therm that you buy. So that's gas. That price is high, and unless they can sort those out, I think that will delay the problem. There you go. I've got to finish. I'm being given the evil eye. Thank you very much. Yeah.